A man ordered the most expensive dish on the diner's menu, but when the bill came, the most awkward thing happened. The waitress thought he was trying to dine and dash, so she resigned herself to just covering the tab for him, but the man instantly turned beet red. To prove he wasn't just looking for a freebie, he not only promised to return and pay the bill, but even insisted on offering his lottery ticket as a tip for the waitress. Although the man gave her his word, the "I forgot my wallet" routine happens every day. After being let down by life time and again, Yvonne had long since learned not to get her hopes up over anyone's promises. The movie It Could Happen to You uses a winning lottery ticket as a catalyst to explore the tug-of-war between money and human nature, and the true weight of kindness and integrity, without forced melodrama. It shows how the warmth of a promise kept can be even more moving than a multi-million-dollar jackpot. It makes you deeply realize that, while money determines the material quality of life, it cannot measure the warmth of the human heart. Short-term gains might bring fleeting satisfaction, but only by holding fast to integrity and kindness can we find lasting peace and precious connection. Now, let's dive into this story from Yvonne's perspective. In her eyes, humanity is full of deceit and selfishness, just like her ex-husband, whose lies were woven with flowers and sweet nothing, but eventually turned into daggers that stabbed her in the back. He not only cleaned out her savings account, but also maxed out her credit card, leaving her $12,000 in debt. Although Yvonne pleaded with the court, explaining she had long been separated from her husband and knew nothing about the spending, the law only looked at the cardholder's name. Plus, they were technically still married, since Yvonne couldn't afford a decent lawyer. In the end, she could only watch helplessly as the judge declared bankruptcy. Just like that, she went from a girl with dreams to a waitress struggling just to survive. She faces constant bullying from her boss. Just for being 2 minutes late, she was docked half a day's pay. The unseen pressure from her boss. It got so bad, even her coworkers couldn't stand it. They even joined her in sneaking cigarette ash into the boss's coffee. In her despair, that was the only tiny act of rebellion she could manage. In this darkest chapter of her life, Yvonne felt her situation was truly hopeless. She was ready to just accept her fate, but fate works in mysterious ways. The next day, while Yvonne was slaving away at the diner, the man she'd met just once actually came back. Seeing Charlie again made Yvonne realize she'd been rude the day before, so she immediately offered a sincere apology. But before she could finish, her boss started berating her. Yvonne just asked Charlie not to leave yet, promising to make it up to him when the rush was over. She turned around and dove back into work, completely unaware that Charlie was watching her closely. Her kindness toward a sick elderly customer, and the way she swallowed her pride when the boss yelled at her. Charlie took it all in. What surprised her even more was that Charlie had actually brought her a gift. It was a delicate chain for her glasses. In that moment, her heart skipped a beat. It had been so long since anyone paid her that kind of attention, so long since anyone gave her such a thoughtful little gift. Inexplicably, she opened up about her own struggles, but Charlie's next words left her completely confused. He asked her if she believed in luck, and then gave her a choice. Right after that, Charlie dropped the news that he'd won the lottery. At first, Yvonne thought it was just a joke, until she heard the number, $4 million. Her first reaction wasn't joy, but a flash of anger, because she was terrified that the last shred of dignity she had left was being crushed by a cruel prank. After all, in this cold world, who would take a fortune big enough to change a life and share it with her? A waitress constantly getting chewed out by her boss? She looked into Charlie's sincere eyes, and those hopes that life had crushed, the glimmer of hope she hadn't dared to dream of, suddenly began to spark within her heart, until Jack insisted again and again. Only then did she dare to believe this absurd reality. A relieved smile instantly surfaced. Oh my God! Oh my God! It turns out, in this hopeless world, someone is actually willing to stop and give her a hand. This shattered her cynical view of human nature. It turns out some promises can truly bloom into gentle flowers from the dust. Back at the diner, she shared her joy with the regular customers, excitedly treating everyone to a meal. But after the thrill, she suddenly hesitated. She felt she couldn't accept this enormous kindness from a stranger. After all, that promise was just a casual joke from Jack. He only owed a meager tip. How could a simple joke warrant such a huge price? With his insistence to take it, finally, Finally, Yvonne accepted this unexpected windfall, but what she didn't know was that this stroke of luck had made Jack's wife resent him bitterly, until Jack explained that such a generous act could attract media attention, not only advertising their hair salon, but even offering a chance to break into high society. Only then did she temporarily drop her concern. On the day of the award, Jack's gesture of giving a waitress a $2 million tip instantly thrust them into the limelight. Facing questions from the media, Yvonne knew deep down she didn't deserve it, so she deliberately left the spotlight to Jack and his wife. And his wife, in front of the camera, played the part of a woman with a heart of gold. After receiving the prize money, Yvonne didn't end up like Jack's wife, who lost herself in the sudden well, using money to construct a hollow high society life. She wouldn't even buy Jack decent clothes, and would even snatch away loose change he gave to beggars, scolding him for wasting money on useless things. Yvonne, however, didn't squander it. She simply returned to living the life she loved. She bought her favorite nuts and fresh flowers. Nuts were the little treat she couldn't afford when she was poor. Fresh flowers were a hidden spark of romance in her otherwise dim life. Some might call Yvonne foolish for not knowing how to enjoy her wealth, but to her, money wasn't a status symbol to flaunt. It simply gave her the freedom to bring home the things she loved. But that happiness was shattered by a phone call from her ex-husband. His hollow words of congratulation sounded faker than a $3 bill. He hadn't been in touch for ages, but suddenly popped up the moment she won big. His greed was written all over his face. He wasn't interested in old times. He was clearly just coming for the money. So, she immediately cut him off. She paid off all her debt, and right after that, she bought the diner where she'd worked for so long. Finally, she didn't have to answer to anyone. In a corner of the restaurant, she set up a special table named after Charlie, reserved specifically for the homeless, to provide them with free meals. She did it for no other reason than to honor Charlie, the man who showed her the true value of a promise. She simply wanted to pay that kindness forward. After doing all this, she thought she'd never cross paths with Charlie again, until that night, when fate brought them together once more. They were both attending a gala hosted by the lottery. Even though Yvonne was a millionaire now, she still found herself arguing with a cab driver over loose change. After living in poverty for so long, watching every penny was ingrained in her bones. Just then, Charlie appeared out of nowhere and stepped in to help. Yvonne realized he was just trying to tell her that now that she had money, she didn't need to stress over the small stuff anymore. Because of this little dispute, they missed the boat for the party. Yvonne was filled with guilt. Charlie was supposed to be there with his wife, enjoying the life of luxury she had always dreamed of. But surprisingly, Jack didn't feel like he was missing out at all, because deep down, he loathed those cocktail parties filled with investors, a crowd wearing masks of hypocrisy, spouting insincere pleasantries, where every clink of a glass rang with calculated deceit. That social circle everyone breaks their neck trying to get into was nothing but a boring charade to him. In that moment, Eva realized that he and his wife were from completely different worlds. This had driven a wedge between Jack and her, and they could never go back to the way things were. Later, Eva told Jack about the free meal table she had set up, but Jack brushed it off as unnecessary because in his mind, keeping a promise is just common decency. But this matter-of-fact attitude of his was, in Eva's eyes, the most precious and unique quality he possessed. Just then, a wedding was taking place nearby, but Eva wasn't moved by the sight, because 3 years of a failed marriage had taught her that those seemingly perfect vows can't withstand the test of time. Then, for the first time, she opened up and revealed her painful past, how her ex-husband had cleaned out her savings, and how he had turned her from a woman full of hopes and dreams into a waitress at a diner, swallowing her pride just to scrape by. Jack, in turn, slowly began to talk about his own dead-end marriage, how they had long stopped communicating, leaving only silence and routine day after day. As they talked, they were surprised to find that they both valued love and loyalty above all else. In that moment, Eva suddenly understood that Jack wasn't a fool, and it wasn't that he didn't know the value of money. It was just that in his heart, he held on to things far more important than wealth, sincerity and kindness. When the music started playing in the restaurant, Eva, as if guided by fate, asked him to dance. In that moment, their souls seemed to connect. It was as if they were old friends who had known each other for years. Yvonne thought her life was finally getting back on track, but the darker side of human nature soon resurfaced. The moment she stepped through her door, she noticed a stranger's clothes lying around. It turned out to be her shameless ex-husband, putting on a fake act of tenderness. He tried to squeeze money out of Yvonne. He even threatened to squat in her apartment if she didn't pay. His greed was exactly as she remembered it. It reminded Yvonne clearly clearly once again that for the sake of money, some people will abandon all dignity and conscience. Her ex-husband's inherent selfishness and greed were plainly revealed by the allure of cash, so she didn't hesitate to kick him out. Perhaps fate had a plan for them, because just as Yvonne was checking into a hotel, she turned around to see a downcast Charlie. It turned out his marriage had reached its end, too. His wife couldn't stand his lack of ambition and refused to accept him giving half his winning to a total stranger. She even attacked his character. Ultimately, Charlie's wife filed for divorce. She wanted to spread her wings and fly higher, to chase after wealthy men who could satisfy her material craving. Later, the hotel assigned them to neighboring rooms. Yvonne was surprised when Charlie asked if she wanted to hang out. She agreed without a second thought. Now, Charlie didn't actually know how to rollerblade, but he didn't let that stop him. Even taking a spill right into the lake, Yvonne could see how genuine he was. What surprised her even more was when Charlie took her to the subway station. This feeling of playing the savior warmed Yvonne's heart even more. As they spent time together, the distance between them quietly disappeared. But what they didn't know was that Charlie's wife had already gathered evidence of them being together. Fueled by media sensationalism, they were once again thrust into the eye of the storm. When they went out again, they were immediately mobbed by reporters. What shocked Eva even more was that during Jack's divorce settlement, he had already shared half the winnings with his wife, but she still turned around and attacked him, falsely accusing Eva of being his long-term mistress. She even threatened to sue them, claiming the money was joint marital property, and accusing Eva of using her looks to swindle Jack. On the day of the trial, desperate to claim the entire jackpot, Jack's wife lied through her teeth. She changed their wedding date from the 27th to the 26th, and even claimed the lottery numbers came from her father's dream. Her eyes held no trace of past affection, only the burning madness of greed. She was the one who had despised Jack for being poor, and looked down on his kindness, but now she spun the narrative, playing the victim betrayed by her husband, and schemed against by an outsider. Not only that, her lawyer exploited Jack's kindness, twisting his compromises into admissions of abuse. They even took the evidence of their charity work, and distorted it into proof of Eva wrecking the home. They framed the money as illicit funds Jack had hidden from his wife. At this point, Eva couldn't take it anymore. Although she tried to object, the opposing lawyer seized on the fact that she wasn't divorced yet, making a huge spectacle of it, and attacking her morals. But the truth was, she simply didn't have the money for the divorce fees. Outside, the public criticism was overwhelming. Some called Eva a scheming gold digger, while others called Jack a fool. Unsurprisingly, they lost the case. Eva had to return the winning, and Jack was left with nothing. Unable to accept this reality, Eva fled the courtroom in despair. She felt she had ruined Jack's life, turning him from a respected officer into a penniless defendant. In that moment, she felt the full weight of human prejudice and malice, and how it can be more suffocating than poverty. Looking out at the bustling city lights, Yvonne began to question if sticking to her kindness was a mistake. Could the goodness in human nature really not withstand the temptation of money? Just as she was sinking into despair, Charlie suddenly came looking for her. Yvonne felt like she was just a lowly weed that shouldn't be clinging to Charlie, a tree that was destined to grow towards the sun. She felt she had only dragged him down into the mud, but Charlie ignored her attempts to push him away, and instead told her he loved her. So what if he lost his job? So what if his savings were gone? In Charlie's heart, those fleeting moments spent with Yvonne were worth far more than any paycheck or title. In that moment, Yvonne finally saw what true love really looked like. She didn't want to let a man this good slip away, so she embraced him without hesitation. But right at that moment, a homeless man knocked on the door. Even though he was a stranger with nothing, they still prepared a meal for him. But little did they know, this beggar was actually a photojournalist of tenure. He had witnessed their act of kindness. Early the next morning, a story about kindness rewarded hit the front page headline. It detailed the story of Charlie keeping his promise to share the jackpot, and how, even when they were down and out, they still helped a stranger in need. And so, the gears of fate turned once again. When they went to take one last look at the diner, they were stunned to find stacks of letters behind the door. They were tips sent from all over New York. There was pocket money from children, pensions from the elderly, and encouraging notes from office workers. It was their story that restored people's faith in the goodness of humanity. These letters, carrying the goodwill of strangers, piled up into a small mountain of warmth. Counted up, it came to $600,000. Their kindness ultimately brought them a fortune. Later, Yvonne used the money to finalize her divorce and bought back the diner. Charlie returned to his beat as a cop. In the end, aboard a hot air balloon, they held a romantic wedding. As for Charlie's wife, she was conned by a stockbroker 30 years her senior, who swindled her out of everything. And that brings us to the end of the film. Money gives you confidence, but whether it changes your nature depends entirely on your heart. Human nature is never just black and white. It holds the greed of the ex-husband, the hypocrisy of Charlie's wife, but also Charlie's integrity, and the kindness of strangers. Yvonne went from being a guarded realist to a warm-hearted believer. Her transformation wasn't sudden. She was slowly melted by Charlie's sincerity. The reason Yvonne fell for Charlie was never about the money. It was his kindness and his honor. Even when the wealth was lost, her feelings for him never wavered. I'm sure after watching this movie, many of you are left with a question. If Charlie hadn't chosen to split the prize, would the ending have been different? The answer is actually obvious. A kind soul like Charlie would never have found peace, and the conflict with his wife wouldn't have been resolved, because their values were simply incompatible. The money would have only driven them further apart. As for Yvonne, she likely wouldn't even remember the man she met by chance. She would have just gone on living her quiet, ordinary life. Afterwards, the two of them would have been parallel lines, never to meet again. Without that stubborn sincerity, there would be no legendary romance, and no warmth pouring in from the whole city. In the end, it is kindness that makes this story shine forever.